Growing up, I lived with my mom and stepdad. My real dad was in the Marines, so he was constantly away. I also had an older sister. My mom was a drunk and my stepdad was either working at his dead-end job or high off something. Sometimes he would hit her, but it was mostly just the two of them screaming their heads off at each other. When I was 10, my older sister committed suicide. She was 15. Everything got worse after that. I was alone all the time. Mom/stepdad would fight more and my mom would get hit more often. At the funeral, my cousin and aunt told me if I wanted to live with her I could. I knew my mother wouldn't go for it, so I politely declined. Fast forward to when I'm 12. My stepdad and mom were arguing over money and he started beating the shit out of her. I was terrified. I'd been watching a show on TV and they were in the kitchen not far away. When he noticed me, he started shouting about if I wanted some too. I ran to my room and locked the door behind me. While he banged on my door, calling me all types of names, I shoved as many clothes as I could fit into my backpack and a few other things. Once my backpack was set, I put my savings, roughly $15 or so, in my pocket, opened my window and ran. It was the afternoon, bright and sunny, and the only meal I had that day was breakfast. Naturally, I'm starved. I had this idea in my head of escaping to my aunt's, who lived in the next city over, but I had no clue how to get there. I just knew I couldn't stay at home. I ended up at a diner and I sat at the bar, feeling grown up and trying not to look suspicious. There was barely anyone there, and this friendly older lady was my waitress. She seemed amused at first that I was trying to look grown up and order my own food and such, but she saw my backpack and kind of put two and two together. She asked me where I was headed and I told her my aunt's city. She commented that was a far walk, but I assured her I'd manage. This guy had been sitting close to me and he announced he'd drive me. The waitress and I looked at each other, then this guy. He was probably in his 30s, tall, had a beard. He told me he needed to go 3 cities over and assured me I wouldn't be any trouble. Being stupid and 12, I agreed. The waitress was reluctant, but she told me to wait a second. While I waited, the guy said his name was John and I told him mine. When she came back, she had a slice of apple pie wrapped up and her number written on the box. She even let me keep my money and said it was on the house. I thanked her and then John and I left. He had a semi and he helped me sit on the passenger seat before he came around and we were off. At first, we were silent except for the radio until he started asking me questions. When he questioned my age, I lied and said 15, because I thought I could pass for older, but his chuckle told me otherwise. I was wearing a little pink jacket with flowers on it, so that didn't help my older image any. He told me about his life on the road, how he had a wife, but he didn't really love her, how lonely he was, just all this stuff, and I was trying to not look freaked out. He asked if I had a boyfriend and I said no, and he reached over and touched my leg, telling me that was too bad and one day I'd want one. I remember that the most vividly, how his large hand covered my thigh and how he started rubbing it just slightly. We drove in silence for a little while with him just rubbing my thigh area like that. I spotted a rest stop close enough to my destination and I begged him to pull over. He agreed, and when I grabbed my backpack he was quick to ask why I was taking it. I just lied and said I had my period. He only chuckled and asked what my favorite candy was, since he was gonna get stuff from the vending machine while I used the restroom. Once in the restroom I was freaking out, wondering how the heck I was going to get out of there. This old woman came in and saw me, obviously distressed, and when she asked me what was wrong I just started bawling. Once I told her what happened, she told me she'd drive me the rest of the way. Now, the good thing about these restrooms were that they had 2 exits. We went around back so he wouldn't see us, but we had to circle around to the front to get out. When we were circling I saw him, standing in front of the restrooms waiting for me. He even had candy in his hands. When he saw us he practically ran to his truck and I started crying again. I thought he was gonna follow us and do who knows what to us. He was behind us for a couple minutes, but he ended up not following us, thankfully. When we got to my aunt's, the old woman told her what happened and I ended up giving her my apple pie. I know it was stupid, but I still look out for him when I pass by truckers no matter where I'm at. Okay, so this happened to me last night. It was 11:30 p.m. or somewhere around there. This highway was under construction. One lane and two concrete walls on either side of me. There's a truck in front of me, and I cannot see past him. We're going 70 miles an hour. There are no vehicles behind me. He locks his brakes in front of me, and so I stop. I think nothing of it. I just thought another vehicle stopped in front of him. So we continue on our merry way, and we stop again. I still think nothing of it, due to the fact that I cannot see past him. The road widens to 2 lanes, shoulder and regular. I pull into the shoulder to see past him. There isn't anybody in front of him. I pull back into my lane, and he stops yet again, and I thought that was weird. A few minutes of this, and he begins weaving in between the 2 lanes. He stops, and I stop. I grab my phone at this point and dial 911, but I do not press the call button as the truck in front of me begins moving again. Now, I own a Volvo racing vehicle. So whenever I get into a situation like this, like traffic, start-stop, I put one hand on the steering wheel, one switching gears manually. So I set my phone down to get up to speed. We get up to 70, and I pick up my phone. He brakes at this point, and my phone goes flying across the car. I didn't click call yet, and my phone is in the floorboard somewhere. He starts again. I start again. He stops again after a few seconds, and he starts yet again, getting up to about 50 before he stopped again. At this point, I think that if there is a car behind me, and if they rear-end me, I go underneath this truck in front of me. That scares me quite a bit. Now, I understand that you are wondering why I didn't pass him. I attempted it multiple times while stopped, and he immediately picked up speed and crossed into the lane I was attempting to pass him in. He starts yet again, and I start yet again. We get up to 70. I gain the courage to pass him, and I get halfway up his truck before he rapidly turns to the right. Not slowly and gradually, but quite fast. So I slam on my brakes, and I cannot slow any faster. If he hits me, I go into the concrete wall and go airborne, so I am trying to avoid that. I am about an inch away from taking out my left view mirror. I was that close to the wall. His back tires just barely missed me. They were a couple of inches away. Thank God I hadn't gone any faster, and thank God I didn't make it any closer to the cab, for if I did, I wouldn't have been able to type this up. I am quite sure that his goal was to kill me. I was 18 at the time and had just started college. Living out of state, on my own for the first time. Had a pretty sheltered life. I am also a female. So, my first semester at my out-of-state college had just ended and I was on my way home for my brother's wedding. I'm about an hour away from my current residence with a little over 3 hours left of my trip. Everything is going great and I'm just cruising with the traffic. It was a notably busy day for that particular stretch of interstate. As I said, all is well until I check my mirror. There is a truck a little farther back from the side of my car in the lane next to me. I can see his headlights in my passenger side mirror. I look up because even though it's in the middle of the afternoon and super sunny out, this dude is flashing his lights at me. I try to brush it off and assume he just wants to get into my lane, so I try moving. He stays behind me the whole time, not letting any other cars between us. He keeps flashing his lights at me and I look up at him. He waves and honks. This was a red flag, but I took it the wrong way. I'm like, oh shit. I wonder if he's signaling me to pull over. I hope nothing is wrong with my car. The only reason I think this is because the week before I was leaving I had gotten a hole in my tire and had it patched. I was worried that the patch had fallen out and that my tire was going flat as I traveled at 60 miles per hour. I'm freaking out about my car and planned to pull off at the next exit. Fortunately, it comes up quickly and there is a gas station with some customers visible from the exit ramp. I head there and pull up at a gas pump. Curiously, the trucker follows me off the interstate and into the same parking lot, but he parked in a designated truck zone. I get out just before he parks and walk around my car doing a quick inspection. I see him start to get out of his truck and I decide to buy gas, even though I filled up before I left. As I swiped my card to pay for my gas, the truck driver had reached my car. Lucky for me, since I was already pretty freaked out by him following me off the exit, I had my phone in my hand with 911 already dialed, so I would just have to hit the call button. I left my driver door open and stayed between that and the gas hose. Him standing a few feet away from the back end of my car, the hose separating us. The first thing this guy says to me is, "Well, aren't you a putty tang?" I'm screaming in my head now, imagining all possible scenarios for an emergency escape. He looked to be in his late 30s or early 40s and about 170 pounds. Me, 18, 125 pounds without much muscle or fat anywhere on me. I wouldn't have been able to fight back much. Anyway, I tell him thank you. He offers to buy my gas and I decline, saying my parents gave me money. I was actually worried that he would expect something in return if I had taken his offer. He asked me questions like where am I from, where am I going, etc. Something went off in my head that just said lie. And so I did. Didn't tell him what college I really went to, where I was really headed, what I was doing. Nothing. My gas was done pumping after about a minute. And with that, I told him goodbye, jumped in my car, and got the fuck out of there. I kept an eye on him as I left, making sure he didn't follow me any longer, and he didn't. Never saw him again. I don't know what he wanted with me that day, whether it was just to tell me how attractive I was or if he had something much worse planned. I really regret not reporting him to the police. Since this incident, I've always been leery of truck drivers.